Hi, team leaders. I am here with Jamie Borchek and Nick Casaluccio. So Jamie is the team leader in Chicago, and Nick was a former team leader in Chicago and is now a campus field ministry director with the campus executive team. And I am sitting down to talk with them today about leading with information. And one of the instances that they did that with the Chicago team. And so, guys, can you tell me what question were you guys trying to answer that caused you to search out some data to support that question answer?
Yeah, so one of the things that we had been kicking around, honestly, for years, we had been really kicking around the idea of how valuable is our weekly meeting in terms of getting to new people, and should we keep a weekly meeting or not? And so one of the questions that we had was, is this something that helps us to reach new people? And one of the ways that we help to pursue that, help to answer the question, was we had a discipleship dashboard, and in our discipleship dashboard, for every person that's currently involved in our ministry, one of the questions we asked is, how did they get involved in the ministry? And as we track that information, one of the data points that became interesting to us, I'll share my screen. This is what we found, that 20% of our ministry got involved through a team meeting. About 12% of our meeting got involved through a student referral. And so you can kind of see here all the different ways that people got involved with our ministry. Well, one of those ways was our weekly meeting, and about 15.5% of the people who were involved with our ministry at that time got involved through the weekly meeting. And so that data kind of helped us to at least answer the question of how effective is our weekly meeting at bringing new people in, who gets connected through the weekly meeting.
Yeah, and what I'd add to that, Nick, I think like one of the things that we tried to implement, especially the last 2 years we were working together, and what we've built on since then is leading with good information. Like we've since consolidated the categories even to see, you know, to just give us a better picture of like what are those initial connection points. Yeah, what Nick's sharing here, this is the current version. You can see we consolidated some of the categories here, where we see like AIA ministry event, which is primarily weekly meeting. Like that's the main thing we're doing there. That's over 20% of the students who are involved in our ministry get connected through kind of those consistent, regular meetings, you know? And it drives knowing it, because that's different from outreach event. Like outreach event would be, hey, we're having a cookout or a beginning of the year kind of thing. And we've met a lot of students through that, but it's those regular, consistent meeting things that have driven a lot of our relationships with people. So we just want to have that kind of data as we're making decisions. Yeah, like having good data around what's actually feeding the objectives that we're pursuing. Like if what we're trying to do is, one, connect with new students for the purposes of evangelism and ultimately kind of developing a pipeline for new relationships and new disciples, and then two, building disciples who are going to multiply long term. What are the means by which we get connected to those real people? What are the things that are actually effective in getting us connected? We want to have that information. We want to know what works. So that's where good data is really helpful. And I think in that decision, being able to look at that chart and see, hey, this is what it is, was super helpful.
You guys are doing that. I noticed the this year's percentage of weekly meeting is down, and I know this is that's, I'm assuming that's a difference between a non-COVID year and a COVID year. How does that play into that question of should we continue to do a weekly meeting, or how many people are getting connected in terms of that, the weekly meeting value, when you may not have as many weekly meetings, or maybe smaller?
Yeah, I would just say that the data tells you something. It tells you, how many students are getting connected through each different means, but it doesn't actually make the decision for you. You could imagine two staff teams with the exact same data that like make completely different decisions. And it could be still based on the data. It might be, we see 20% of the people that are connected through a weekly meeting, and one team says, well, this is really important, we need to double down on that. And another team says, hey, if we had a monthly meeting, we probably still hit that 20%. Or maybe given the size of our staff team, this is too much investment to put into a weekly meeting to be able to reach that 20% of people that we're currently getting. Like, we're putting half of our weekly hours into this, so we're going to make a different decision. So the data helps in making the decision, but it doesn't make the decision for you.
Nick and I had some, like, we would argue about this stuff. Like, we would go back and forth about, what's happening and what should we do. And that, I think that's really healthy and productive as you're trying to make good decisions. And we've pretty regularly tracked how many people are coming to our weekly meeting, basically since Nick and I started working together. So I'm sharing this. This come up. Is it working for you guys? Can you see this? Yeah. This is hopefully this will pop up here in a second. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so this is our weekly attendance tracker. It's all the way back to 2012, which is back a decade ago almost now. And there's a gap over here, 2020 to 2021, because of COVID, where things kind of shut down. And there was a semester where we just didn't track it here. But pretty consistently, we've tracked how many students are coming to our meetings over the course of a 10-week quarter. Now, some of these obviously have, there's some gaps, certain quarters for various reasons. So you don't see an average number of people showing up. But one of the trends that we saw, like, there was a pretty steady rise, especially like in the winter. So this is Northwestern, it's a quarter school. So this is tracking at Northwestern specifically. But pretty steady increase in attendance from during the winter quarter each year, where that was a really a good high numbers pretty regularly that quarter, and also pretty steady total attendance increase year over year up until about 3 years ago. And that information, like that's an observation about it. What we do with that is a question. So even this year, like, our numbers, if you look at that, they're down a little bit from where they were pre-pandemic. The total number of people who are coming, but you have to ask the question why. And even though we know that information, it doesn't necessarily dictate that we're going to cancel this meeting or nix it, because who are those people who are coming? Are they those new people who are getting connected? So I frequently get discouraged when I show up in a meeting and there's 18 students there. I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I wasting my time on this? But I think it was the week where there were 18 students there. This is just anecdotally this past quarter. The week there were 18 students there, 2 of them were men's tennis players. We hadn't had a men's tennis player come to an AIA thing or be involved in our ministry for about 3 years. And 2 of them showed up that night. They're brand new people, brand new faces. One of them is an atheist who brought his Christian teammate because he was interested in what we were talking about that night. And both those guys have gotten connected. We've had great conversations. Stuff's happening with them now. So knowing that there are new people, like if the objective for that meeting, which it is for us, like the objective of having that meeting, that's kind of our body mode evangelism space. It's where we want our students to invite their friends to come to. So we're not building that so the Christian kids can hang out with each other. We're building it so that it's a place where you can say to someone, hey, come with me to this. And they can encounter the body of Christ, and they can encounter the word of God. And the fact that some of those new people are getting connected, which our dashboard numbers tell us, that indicates to me, this is worthwhile to keep doing, even if it's not getting as many people as we would want to be there. So that's why we've continued to keep it in place, even as I continue to have kind of a love-hate relationship, and some weeks want to kill the whole thing. But I think there's valid reason to keep it going.
Yeah, that's really cool how you guys are you can, like, pre-pandemic, you guys have pulled the information up and you've said, hey, the weekly meeting is the second largest way people get involved with us. Most of your people who get involved with you don't get involved through a weekly meeting, but that large enough percentage is kind of like, hey, is this big enough to keep it in terms of what we're doing? And even that idea that the total number of people is important to recognize. If regularly nobody's coming, then that's a different story. But just kind of hey, 18 people came, but I got 2 new people from a team that we haven't had anybody in years. Is really cool. So that balance of, hey, let's inform ourselves with the reality of the numbers, but also keep in mind of what we're trying to do in this idea of we're reaching in this athletics department.
Yeah, I'll just add one more thought on that. Like, what I'm trying to do is I try, and even this conversation is a good reminder of this for me. Like, what I'm trying to do in my role with data, and I think our Chicago team, we collect probably more data than the average AIA team does. Like, even with our staff team this year, we have a weekly scoreboard that I have them fill out where they input certain metrics of, did you execute on these particular behaviors? And that data is really useful in informing the coaching we do for our staff. It's useful for informing decisions we make as leadership for our team, and the kinds of offerings that we're going to put forward, because we want to reach every athlete on every campus across Chicago. That's the mission. So we want to know what's actually happening in real time, in real life, so that we can use that data to inform what we're doing. Now, we also have to interpret it. We get data and we have to ask the question, well, why is this the case? Someone's numbers may be really low, but maybe that's not a product of effort. Maybe it's a product of the, or to use the weekly meeting thing, like, fewer students are coming. Well, that very well may be because our meetings are trash and nobody wants to come. But it could also be because like COVID has inhibited people being able to be together socially. It may be because Gen Z has arrived on campus and their desire for those kinds of gatherings is just generally lower than it has been with previous generations. So there's a number of possible factors. Or there might be a basketball game that night. And I actually like, I have another document where I track that stuff. And I have there's a basketball game this night. There was the athletics department had this event for all the seniors this night. Like, there's other stuff going on. So it's like, yeah. Like, we want to know, as far as we can control things, are we offering the best pathways for people to get connected to us and ultimately get connected to Jesus?
Yeah, I love that. It's interpret the data in context of the mission and context of the reality that's happening around you. I didn't even think about, like, oh, is there a basketball game that night? Like, that's really big. But yeah, thanks so much for sharing, guys. This is really cool in terms of how you guys are utilizing information to inform decisions, but it's not driving and making decisions for you guys. You guys are really processing through that that context of how does it move us forward. So that's awesome. So
yeah, thanks.
So team leaders, if you guys have questions, feel free to. I'm gonna volunteer Jamie and Nick. If you guys have questions, you can drop something in their inbox. And see kind of what they're doing, that we're actually encouraging you guys to rub shoulders with other leaders who are doing stuff and learning how to lead with information. So thanks so much, guys.